So today we're talking about subjunctive, but to get ready for this, let's think about what you all have been studying from the very beginning, okay? Verbs have a lot of variety, and a big part of learning language is learning all the different ways to use verbs, right? We have talked about indicative tenses, imperative tenses of verbs, and today we'll start by looking at subjunctive mood. In order to understand the subjunctive, let's go back and talk a little bit about what these other two forms are. What does indicative look like? No idea? Indicate, thank you. If I indicate something to you, what does that mean, Danny? It's like just telling, right? Like you're informing, okay? Indicative tenses are used to tell what you believe to be quite certain, whether it's about the present, the past, the future. You're indicating what you know, okay? And all the verb tenses that we've learned almost have been indicative. Present, present progressive, preterite, imperfect, future, all of them. Because you're just telling the way you perceive the present, past, and future about whatever's around you or in your mind, right? So that's indicative. Imperative, what does that look like? If I say, it's imperative that you do your homework. Absolutely necessary. It's like urgent. It's like a big deal. Very important. What kind of verb tenses do you think were imperative? Yeah, some in the present, but commands is what I'm looking for. When you're giving commands to people, that's like super urgent. You're like, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do that. Those are some things that we've learned, okay? Now today we're going to start learning what is the subjunctive or subjunctive mood. Subjunctive talks about things that have some uncertainty in them. It might be right, it might not be right. You think this, or you hope this, or you want this to happen, but it might not. Okay? In English, when we speak in a subjunctive, we just say something like, you know, I'm not really sure, or I'm hoping this, but da 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 da. In Spanish, the language is much more articulate, and we can just write in a subjunctive mood or speak in a subjunctive mood. And when people read it or hear it, they're like, oh, that guy's a little uncertain. That might not happen, okay? So we're going to talk about that today, and our goal is going to be just get a main idea of what subjunctive is like, okay? You don't have to become the subjunctive master, but you want to have a main idea of what it's all about, okay? So let's check it out. Here, what? It's probably just a ghost. Okay, anyways. Yeah, there goes another room. Okay, so I like to use this to help us remember the parts of writing in the subjunctive. Okay? Isn't it cute? So nice. Oh! Oh! Yeah, it's really cool. And we could even, where's the dude? Okay. So, why am I drawing a train, you are wondering, when we're talking about subjunctive mood? I'm drawing a train because it represents the different parts of a sentence that you will see in when you're writing in subjunctive. Okay? You got the engine and you got the back part of it. and they got to be connected or the whole train wouldn't move, right? The word que is always used to connect these two parts. So that's number one. You're always going to have the word que in there. Up front, what is the engine is going to be an independent some kind of independent clause. What does independent mean? When we're talking about, say it again. It could stand alone. If we take this, this could be a sentence in itself. This clause that we're going to have here, okay? And then at the back, we're going to have a subjunctive. And we just learned subjunctive means there's some kind of uncertainty, and it's also subordinate. And subordinate means it relies on, or it's under, like, under the power of, or under, it relies on this independent clause, okay? It can't go by itself. So the reason I use the train analogy, if you put the cars on the track, they can't go by themselves, right? An engine, yeah, it could go by itself. When we put all these together, we hook it together with the word que, everything can go. Okay, so that's kind of a way to remember and look at this. So there's going to be certain types of words that appear up here in the independent clause. If we look at the backboard, what are we going to use subjunctive mood for in this chapter? Hopes and wishes, right? So let's say, what are some verbs? What are some words that we could use to talk about hopes and wishes? What's to hope? ¿Cómo se dice de hope? Desear. Desear would work. Also, there's one that starts with E. Esperar. Like espero, I hope. Esperas, you hope. So I'm going to write a sentence here. If you don't know the verb esperar, please write it down on your vocabulary. To hope. Okay? And so I started my sentence here. Espero que, I hope that. What's something that I might hope for? To win a soccer game? Okay. I hope that I win or we win. We win? Okay. I hope that we win the soccer game. Okay? So we want to put over here, we win, but we want to show some kind of uncertainty into it. So I'm going to put it in a subjunctive. Espero que ganemos el partido. I hope that we win the game. All right? Now, you're probably looking, oh, this is half erased real quick. Let me fully erase it so we can go from the start. You're looking at ganemos. What is this? What's this coming from? Ganar. Ganar is an AR verb, and I've got an E in there. So you might be saying, are you out of your mind? I'm not out of my mind. I want to show you how to conjugate and form subjunctive verbs. But before we do that, I want to make sure that you know what a subjunctive sentence is. So let's just take a second, and would you please turn to a partner and describe to them in your own words, what's the difference between indicative, imperative, and subjunctive sentences? Okay? Go ahead with that, please. So let's continue on here. What do you got, Connor? Difference between imperative, indicative, and subjunctive.
Imperative is like a fact.
Indicative. Indicative is a fact.
Oh, indicative
Okay.
is fact. Imperative is like a command.
Imperatives, commands. Okay.
And subjunctive is like uncertain.
Right on. Does that mean you can never say a lie in the imperative? You can, right? When we say imperative, it's kind of, we're pretty certain that's the way it is, right? So you're very nice, thank you. So let's take a look then, how are we going to conjugate into present subjunctive? Because that's what we're learning, the present subjunctive. It's easy. First of all, you take the present yo form of any verb, okay? Tengo, camino, como, escribo, any of those. Drop off the O, and then we're going to add the ending. So let me show you what the ending might look like. If it's an AR verb, hemos, en. If it's an ER or IR verb, a, as, a, amos, and I. Right. Sometimes I call this the opposite vowel, right? Seems like you would want to use an ER over here or an A over here. You just switch the opposite vowel. I can do an example. I'm going to pull this. Oh, that is grouped. Okay. So let me pull this up here to the example I did before. Make it a little bit smaller. Okay. So these are just the endings I pulled up, right? We're remembering we're taking the yo form, dropping the O, and then adding these endings. So here we took ganar, and we were saying, I hope that we win. What would the yo form of ganar be? Gano. I win. In the present tense. In the present tense would be gano. I dropped the O, and then I just added EMOS. So ganemos. Okay? And the reason, again, we write like this is so people know. We understand there's uncertainty. This is expressing a hope or a wish. And you may not become a perfect expert at it on day one, but we want to have a general idea of what's going on. There's another vocabulary word I want to point out for you that you have on your list this chapter. Ojalá. Ojalá means, it's like saying I hope that, right? It's actually an Arabic expression that came when the Moors ruled the Iberian Peninsula. It comes from like, oh, to Allah, their God, like, oh, I hope Allah will make this happen for me, okay? That's where it comes from, ojalá. But this, a lot of times, will show up in here. Ojalá que ganemos. It's like saying, I hope that. So again, subjunctive mood is used for expressing hopes or wishes. We draw it like a train because the engine can go by itself if it needs to. It's independent. The cars in the back, they cannot. They're subordinate. But when you hook them together with the word que, it all rolls down the track to express hopes or wishes. Are there any questions? Okay, let's take a look at our speaking for today then.